Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO, and as always, I'm grateful you've dropped in on the show where week after week I talk to the most amazing leaders who share their business insights with you, and I know they are definitely going to inspire you. And just know we put out this podcast because I sincerely care about the C-suite leaders to navigate their challenges with confidence. And this week, I am pleased to introduce to you Dorsey Standish, who has her master's in mechanical engineering. She's a neuroscientist and wellness expert who brings evidence based mindfulness and emotional intelligence to clients worldwide through her company, Mastermind. Dorsey has led science based wellness programs for hundreds of companies, including Staples, Toyota, and American Airlines. Her personal mission is to help type A people like herself and me slow down, de stress, and optimize their performance through research based brain health training. Dorsey, thank you for dropping in on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Deb.
And I'm excited for this conversation. Shout out to Neil Thompson. He has his radar up for these amazing people to say, hey, Deb, you got to interview her. She is a STEM professional and sincerely believes on building up the skills that people need for success. But we met briefly. We have had some amazing conversation. I cannot wait for her to share her personal story and a bit about her career journey. So I am going to pass the mic over to you, Dorsey.
Thank you so much, Deb. And yeah, from one engineer to another, both of us have made our way from engineering training on to other pursuits. And it's funny, people will ask me often, do you miss being an engineer? And I'll say to them, I still use that degree every day. I'm engineering wellness solutions today for my clients, just like I engineered optomechanical designs at Texas Instruments for many years. So I hope you feel the same way, that once an engineer, always an engineer, right? I'm so grateful to have a chance to share a little bit about my background. As I mentioned, I am an engineer by training and probably one of the most type A linear thinkers, daughter of two lawyers in the DC area. And my upbringing was really focused on achievement, going to the best school I could get into, getting the engineering degree, landing a quote unquote good job at TI after graduation. And once I got into the professional world, I continued everything I knew, climbing the corporate ladder, staying up late, sending emails, doing everything I could to be the best at my job. And it wasn't until I was launching a new product and leading a small team of engineers in the spring of 2015 that got to go back and forth to Asia for production meetings, just all kinds of really exciting things that from the outside looking in, it looked like I was living a dream. And there came this moment about a month before the product was supposed to launch where I was at a routine doctor's appointment and my doctor stopped me and said, are you okay? Several doctor's appointments later, I was diagnosed with severe burnout, mental, physical health crisis, and was told I would have to take weeks, maybe even months off of work to recover and regain stability with respect to my mental health. That would have been hard for anyone, but especially for me. I was so externally focused. Work was my whole world. When I was forced to slow down and sit with myself, I realized I was maybe looking successful from the outside in, but I really felt empty from the inside out and didn't have a strong foundation for my mental health. Being an engineer, though, I was determined to engineer my way back to some mental health and stability. And so I started researching stress resilience, other people who'd been on these mental health journeys. And through my research, I kept coming across mindfulness and mindful meditation. And Deb, maybe you can relate as a fellow type A. I was like, what? Non-doing, there's got to be something else. Like, please tell me that mindfulness is not the answer. I want to check more boxes off my to-do list. Oh my gosh. But I was desperate enough and convinced enough by the research showing that mindfulness could boost mood, could reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression, build stress resilience over time. I was like, okay, I'll try 2 minutes of mindfulness per day. And in that first 4 weeks of committing to those moments of mindfulness, there were definitely challenges, days I didn't want to practice. But by the end of that month off, I was doing multiple practices per day. And even when I went back to work, I had this intangible sense of giving to myself and my own health before I gave so much externally to the world. I was more focused, I was less reactive, and it started this snowball effect of well being in my life where instead of being so focused on what my life looked like from the outside in, I was really in tune with the inside out. And this mindfulness practice, it grew. I went on silent retreats. I started prioritizing my sleep and my nutrition and all these amazing things. But the first step for me was really slowing down and getting in touch with the inner wisdom inside of me instead of putting so much power in the hands of other people. Because during my mental health crisis, I mean, believe me, I needed those doctors. I needed to take their medication for a while. I needed to figure things out, but I also needed to slow down enough to listen to myself. And for me, mindfulness has given me back that gift of hearing and ultimately trusting my own voice that served as the foundation for me getting healthy, but also then in the past 10 years, being able to share that brain health approach with my clients through my company mastermind.
Oh, you resonate a lot with me being a fellow type A. And I know a lot of my audience are high performers, so please continue to listen in as we dig deep into this. But just curious, while you have greater awareness of who you are and what your priorities are with respect to health, mental health and physical health, is there any though you don't want to like change who you are? Is there still a part of you that is type A, and how does that manifest itself?
Oh my gosh, yes. So I'll tell you a secret, Deb. Um, my first month, so it was May of 2015 was that month I was like, I'm just going to do 2 minutes of meditation a day. I actually used the Calm app, which allowed me to check these green boxes every day that I did it. So I have this screenshot on my phone, May of 2015, my first month of green checks on every day. So while I don't necessarily aspire to be perfectionistic and type A and so focused on doing all day every day, I also know myself, and I've been able to even engineer some of the mental health tools that I use to best resonate with my personality and tap into some of those strengths, the engineering mind. John Kabat-Zinn says that the only goal of meditation is to become more of who you really are. So I don't believe I'm trying to change anything. I believe I'm peeling away layers of conditioning and poor coping mechanisms that get in the way of me expressing my truest essence in the world.
All right, so we're going to share a lot because I too, from an accountability perspective, it's not about getting more done and having that constant flurry of activity, but I too have my checklists to keep myself accountable, not necessarily to do more, but to be more of who I'm meant to be. And then I can figure out, okay, where do I spend my time and where do I not? So let me just ask another thing because I want your personal experience to relate to my audience without giving away too much. But what can you share then about when you got to that mental and physical health crisis and you needed to take that time? What were a couple of the very visible things that you showed in your physical or mental health, just in case somebody's out there that's me.
That's a great question, Deb, because I think quite honestly, if I hadn't been sort of stopped and held up at that routine doctor's appointment, that I probably would have kept going for a while. Um, my self-awareness has definitely increased since I've started practicing mindfulness, but at that time, I did not have self-awareness of how I was showing up. There are a couple things that were kind of telltale signs. I think a big contributing factor was the time zone travel back and forth to Asia all across the country. And just, I found this old Facebook post from 2014 that, like, I'm going on my first international business trip. I stayed up all night packing, like, woohoo, all nighter. Like, I still had that kind of college mindset, almost a young person of like, I can sleep when I'm dead. Work is the most important thing. And so sleep was just not there. Another sign was just continuing to choose poor nutrition to keep my energy up, whether that was multiple venti coffees from Starbucks. I actually remember earlier that year going into Starbucks at 6 a.m. and getting my usual venti coffee. And I usually, this is embarrassing, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I usually got like cake pops or lemon squares for breakfast. Terrible,
What's wrong
right?
with that?
Uh, on the occasional days, yes. Today, I can see the blood sugar roller coaster before I do something like that early. But I remember they were out of them that day, and the barista turned to me and she's like, "Do you want to try some yogurt? Like it might keep you fuller and like feel better." But that's another example of how I was prioritizing my mind and outward achievement over my physical body and any sort of sustainable health choices. It was all about I just need to be awake enough, alert enough to get another email out to check another box. And there came a moment on the trip prior to that doctor's appointment where I've been drinking coffee. I'm on the way to the airport, late night taxi driver. He's drinking coffee too. We're having this beautiful conversation about life and coffee and just like so connected. We get to the airport. I get out of the car. He helps me get all my bags out. And all of a sudden, I can't find my phone. The taxi cab driver stole my phone. I can't believe it. I start yelling at him. I call over security. I'm freaking out, freaking out. 2 minutes later, I discovered my white phone face down on top of the white cab. I had put it there getting out of the car, and I was so disconnected from reality that I turned on this new friend, blamed him, freaked out, caused a major scene because I wasn't mentally with it enough to know where I put my own phone. And so those are some of sort of the first signs. At first, it affected just me. And then as I became more mentally unstable and not taking care of my well-being, it started to affect the people around me. And thank goodness that I was stopped and paused before I caused more harm. I think, Deb, sometimes if you're a high achiever like me, it's like, well, if I can just, get this thing done and do this, and like this is the most important thing. And we put that above everything else, above, showing up as a good human being and connecting with other people, which is what I believe we're meant to do on this earth. So that's what this journey has taken me on. It's starting to recognize those signs earlier so that I don't lose my temper with my 14-year-old who won't get off his phone, right? Or I realize I need a rest break halfway through the day, like little things like that. Um, Tell me
Yeah.
what if this resonates. What's your experience been with some of these
Yeah. I
signs?
mean, so I too have I was kicked out of the nest from a corporate situation, but it was the best thing that happened to me as well. Because I remember a month or so before, I kept telling my husband, something's got to change. Something's got to
Mm,
change. Because my usual go tos that might calm my nerves, despite a stressful situation, were no longer working, nor could I handle the workload anymore. I said, something's got to change. And I didn't know what that was. So life happened. And again, for all of our listeners, I hopefully you don't have an acute situation that's so bad that it has a high impact, but just enough of a wake up call to say something has to change. And those pauses are not one of self defeat, but they are to be celebrated, whether forced upon or you choose to, because you do take the time, whatever it is, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's walking, whether it's listening to podcasts. I started realizing what made me sad and versus what gave me joy. And out of that, started a wellness journey. It also started a purpose journey of what was I really meant to do. And the other thing I'd like to comment about what you said that really resonates with me so strongly is those external validation versus internal rewards. When we're so focused on what the external world expects of us or what success looks like, we lose ourselves in the process to really understand what is our own internal success and measurement stick. And that needs to be celebrated more and more, for which I'm grateful that you're elevating this topic, because having that internal purpose, which leads to that internal wellness, is really what we should be celebrated for, and not the amount of activity or how many coffees we've had.
yes, I can't even look at a venti Starbucks coffee anymore.
I mean, I love coffee. I mean, I love it. I love the taste, but it's different between needing it and just wanting and enjoying it. The warmth, the
Mhm.
smell, and how it makes you feel inside. It's really two different experiences. But I would want to go deep into your work, because for those of you who are nodding their heads as they're listening to this podcast or watching us on the YouTube channel, I'd love to know a little bit more about your work. Like what does your ideal client look like or feel like when they come across your doorstep and you start a conversation? Because I want to know the starting point. So for anybody listening, they too can say, "Ah, yep, I see that in me," or "I see that in my team."
Great question, Deb. So my most common calls are from organizational leaders. They might be HR leaders, they might be team leaders who are noticing that their employees, maybe themselves are included in this, that they're so overworked, so stressed out, so burned out, so disconnected from each other that they're starting to make mistakes that cost clients money or time. That to the point where that sort of hero culture, as one of my clients calls it, people are sort of bragging about, I stayed up all night, I did this, to the point where, again, there's starting to be a cost, whether that's financial, whether that's energetic to the person. And they're seeing people maybe have some of those changes, early signs that I showed of not necessarily being mentally or physically okay. And my organizational clients that come to me, they usually are really concerned about bringing up something like mindfulness or meditation because they're like, I don't know, my group is really, I do a lot of work on construction sites. I know you're in manufacturing, right? I don't know how they're going to respond to this, or emotional intelligence. They think that's a soft skill. Like, I don't do, you know, um, and so they have an awareness of what would help. It's usually somebody that has a foot in the wellness world, as you do. And they're also want to be really cautious and intentional about how they bring a new tool to their team so that they can make sure that it's well received and it's not just a check the box lunch and learn one time thing for Stress Awareness Month, but it's really the start of a cultural shift. And so typically our consultation calls they end up being a little bit about the leader, right? Because you and I both know that culture comes from the top down and the inside out. So we need strong leadership modeling these skills. We also need champions within the organization to perpetuate some of these wellness habits. So talking to them a little bit about their biggest struggles, how they show up on the team. And then usually I recommend starting with an initial keynote or half day, full day training or series that gives people an opportunity to come together. Social connection is one of the most important pillars of brain health, and it's so underrated in today's hybrid world. We want to check boxes. We want to half listen on the Zoom call while we're doing 15 other things. Just bringing people into a room together, even if you don't hire a speaker, like providing lunch one day a week is one of the literally easiest low-hanging fruit that you can do. So usually the first time I come work with an organization, we try to get people as connected together as possible, and start some team building and connection oriented activities where people get a chance to share what they're going through and feel a little bit lighter by feeling held and supported from the group. And then from there, it's anything, you mentioned the fractional consulting, working as a fractional chief wellness or chief mindfulness officer, ongoing. Most of my clients do weekly, monthly, or quarterly type trainings or virtual connection calls, and anything they can do to keep the momentum of mindfulness and presence and slowing down so that nobody has to get to that crisis point that I did before they start prioritizing their mental health. They have the tools in their toolkit, the knowledge, the user's guide to their brain to proactively help themselves and help each other before they get to burnout or breakdown.
I have so many questions. We're going to get through many of these as quickly as possible. But again, you had to do this for yourself personally to get to a different level of performance and, again, mental and physical wellness. But during this time of change or transformation for yourself, what was the impact on friends and family along the way?
That's a good question. I mean, Deb, like it's so funny. My wife and I are going to Paris over the holiday with our two boys. We have a 14-year-old and a 1-year-old, which is a whole nother podcast to talk about stress management. Um, but we're going to Paris, and people have been asking me, have you ever been to Paris before? And I need to work on my answer because I've been saying something like, yes, but it was in a past life. And they're like,
Okay.
what? What does that mean? What I mean is that it was 15 years ago before I started my health and wellness journey, and I literally feel like a different person. Um, I remember I used to go home to get my hair done for several years, even after I moved to Dallas, Texas. And I remember probably a year after I had started meditating, my hairdresser, I was sitting in the chair and she's like, you seem different. Like, what's going on? She started to notice, like, what's that? my parents, they originally kind of made fun of me for starting to meditate, very skeptical, cynical lawyers. But by 2019, 2020, especially during the pandemic, they started to join some of my online mindfulness classes. My mom had the Calm app open over Thanksgiving when I was visiting her a few days ago using her meditation. My dad uses the phrase change the channel on his negative thoughts all the time that came out of one of my classes. So it's funny because I think sometimes the people closest to us are the most skeptical. We're the slowest to see change in people that we see every day. We just expect them to show up the same. And my experience has been that, especially with people close to me, whether it's my parents, now it's my wife, my kids, nothing I say is going to make that much of a difference, right? It's really what I do myself, the example I set, and how I show up in the world that's ultimately going to move the needle and is going to make somebody believe me and listen to me, whether that's a 14-year-old, whether that's a client, whether that's somebody in a training that's really skeptical until I tell a story about my burnout moment, or the technology doesn't work for the keynote and I have to handle a stressful situation that comes up, right? It's like those real life moments and my personal wellness efforts are always going to be more important than citing any neuroscience study or having a profound mindfulness teaching. And as long as I keep that focus on myself and my practice and how I show up, everything else flows from it. My personal relationships, my business, I really have to remember that it's an inside out job for me.
So I love all of this. And I too have been on this wellness journey for which meditation or being present or reflecting has been part of it. I share the same sentiment in the beginning. I did it and I was like, okay, I'm a little calmer, but I'm just not getting anything from it. Again, maybe I needed a guide or some teachings around it. But at the end of the day, I have settled on, I spend about 10 to 30 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes with myself, and I have my affirmations of those things, those visualizations of who I am as a person and where I am going, and writing things down. And that, I would say, is almost my meditation. I also would say, writing. I love to write. I love self-expression. And in flow in those creative spaces, I come out of it feeling much calmer in knowing that I've served myself first versus serving others. And days that I don't do it, I feel like I'm missing something. So my takeaway is there are different tools and tricks and methodologies that are proven, but I think anybody can find what makes them feel best to know that I'm serving myself first mentally and physically before being in service to others. So I so appreciate your work. What I would love to know, though, because again, if there's somebody out there that's saying, this starts sounding like me and my organization, how have you helped individuals or teams of people? What was the impact of your work?
Before I go back into that, Deb, I want to comment on what you just said about finding your own personal wellness journey, because let me take you back to my
Sure.
dad, who's, you know, high powered. He's literally has the title super lawyer in some
Okay.
magazine. I don't even know why they make that, but he is like a super lawyer, right? Super high powered, laughing at me for meditating. And he did tell me, though, a couple years into my practice, he's like, oh yeah, well, I love to garden on the weekends and listen to instrumental music. I'm like, Dad, that sounds a lot like mindfulness, which, people have a misconception that that means my hands need to look like this, or my legs need to be crossed, or I need to be perfectly calm. But it's really a way of paying attention where we're present, we're engaged, and we're flexible and curious rather than judgmental in our thinking. That might come from journaling, as you said. That's an informal mindfulness practice when we're letting what's here bubble up and putting it onto a page. It could be gardening. It could be walking without the phone and noticing the sights. It could also be a more formal body scan practice. But mindfulness is for everyone. And what I find with most of my clients is that they already have some sort of mindfulness or personal wellness practice that they just haven't been acknowledging themselves for, that they haven't been really celebrating and leaning into and owning it. So I love that you gave your personal example, because my goal is not for everybody to go on silent meditation retreats or even take up meditation. It's to get to know themselves better and put what's in here first. And that's what I do with organizations. One of the coolest transformations that I've been able to see happen just this year here in the DFW area is with a construction client. we've been working together on various mental health initiatives for a couple years. You might know that the construction industry, which probably overlaps with manufacturing in many respects, is one of the worst in terms of suicide attempt rates. And so mental health has become a part of the safety conversation for teams. And so we were doing these mental wellness calls and these mindfulness sessions. And it just so happened that on a local site here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, this company started having issues with their team cohesion and team dynamics. And there were individuals struggling with stress and overwhelm, and they weren't connecting very well. And so we moved from, instead of just doing the monthly virtual mindfulness calls, the app, all the things, we moved to an in-person on-site approach, which especially in the construction industry, there are walkie-talkies, people coming in and out of the trailer, deadlines, heavy machinery moving around. I mean, it's a really dynamic environment. And so my experience is I have to be there in person holding space for folks to take off their PPE and really sit all the way down and connect with each other. And we went from talking about team resilience, and I'll never forget, like, the superintendent sitting in the back, like, crossing their arms, like, who are you, and what do you tell me about? To 5 sessions later, this team had put together their own version of community agreements, how they wanted to treat each other, which included, I will tell you, greeting each other by flicking each other off. And curse words were allowed, right? They
It's
were very
endearment.
authentic. Yes, they were very authentic to themselves. They had these community agreements. They had this resilience quote about thriving during challenge up on their whiteboard amidst all their project plans. And their individual emotional intelligence scores skyrocketed, especially in the areas of self-awareness. They were pausing and checking in with their emotions on a regular basis. And what was so cool, Deb, is the last day I was out there on site, the team had just totally shifted in its dynamic. And one of the individuals came and sat me down. He said, Dorsey, this training has really changed me. He's like, yes, it's helped with work. I no longer procrastinate on getting things done, but what's really changed is my relationship with my ex-wife and my girlfriend. We have these beautiful, strong relationships. I'm able to co-parent better for my young son. I'm able to show up with them and relate to them as human beings on a completely different level. I have goosebumps just telling that story again because that's what this is all about. It's you never know, with your audiences, with your work that you do, who's going to be impacted. But at the end of the day, more productivity, less stress, fewer healthcare costs, that's all great. But when somebody can take what they learn in a workplace training and bring it home and be a fuller, happier, healthier, more compassionate human, like that's so cool. You're not just checking boxes or reducing costs, you're giving people their lives back, ownership of their nervous systems, and a whole toolkit of coping skills that they can use to navigate life's inevitable challenges.
And that's an amazing story. And knowing joy, having peace of mind, is all part of this. That's perfect for the mental health. But I would like to just ask you one more question because I'm sure our listeners have really valued this conversation. But if there was one or two things that you could advise people could actually start doing now and start on a journey of mindfulness, what might that be?
Yeah. If you're listening right now, you're probably like me and you do like 6 other things while you listen to a podcast. So my invitation would be to literally start with us right now. So put your phone down, put your stuff down. Deb, if you'll join me, put one hand on your chest, put one hand on your belly, actually sense your body breathing, and take a big breath in and a full breath out. You might notice as you continue to breathe and sense the breath that the breath is flowing in and out of the chest. See if you can shift it down into the belly. This is diaphragmatic breathing, helps to calm the nervous system. And we'll take 2 more big belly breaths together. You might even bring both hands down to the belly, breathing in deeply and breathing out slowly. One more big breath in and full breath out. And then slowly re-engaging in the multitasking and all the things you have to do, not trying to change who you are or all the amazing things that you do for this world, for your community, for your family, for your workplace. Inviting you to take those little micro moments. So often we overcomplicate it. We think I have to read a book and get an app and come up with this whole 60-day plan. I'll start on January 1st. And my invitation to people is don't wait, start where you are. As Eckhart Tolle says, even one breath can be a meditation. We have these tools of our breath, our body, our five senses that are always here with us in the present moment. And we can practice mindfulness by listening fully to what a loved one is saying this holiday season, or wiggling our feet, our toes on our shoes and feeling our feet on the ground, or my favorite, taking a few of those deep breaths to reset. I would encourage you to start with just 1 or 2 mindful minutes per day where you sense into the breath, the body, where you do a sensory treasure hunt, notice what you can see, what you can hear. Set a timer on your phone and carve out that time and space for what's inside of you to start to bubble up and guide you. As Deb shared, it's her writing, but it's your purpose, your essence, all the things that you're meant to prioritize are right in here. And if we stay so busy with the doing and the noise, we never get down to the root, the essence of who we are, where all the magic is. And just a few of those mindful moments can start to allow you to really come out and affect change from the inside out.
So, Dorsey, I love this conversation, and I did feel slightly calmer for just taking a few moments for myself and breathing in and breathing out. And we want everybody to do that safely when they can. And I know it helps. I've done it. And breathing is the best thing we can do as humans. It slows things down, and we can reflect and just be. Dorsey, I would love to give you the mic one last time. This has been an amazing conversation, but any last thoughts for our listeners or ways that people can connect with you if they want to learn more?
Of course. I want to give you a heartfelt thanks for tuning in and learning from Deb and getting to know me a little bit. This has been such a fruitful conversation, and I love how much synergy there is in our journeys, Deb, and how much the executives that have the pleasure of working with you get to learn from you and your journey. I would encourage you, if you think that your organization could use some support with respect to mental health or stress management, team building, and team cohesion, don't worry, there's all the research to show that they do help the bottom line in addition to those personal stories about changing lives. I'd love to chat more, learn about some of your biggest challenges and struggles, and share how we at Mastermind can help you for 2025 and beyond to start prioritizing mental health and wellness first and really building that strong culture of presence and resilience from the inside out. Our website is mastermindmeditate.com. You can check out my page, Dorsey Standish, on LinkedIn. I think all the links will be in the show notes, but would love to get connected and hear more about your journey, especially if you are a high performer that's been on a wellness journey yourself. Love to hear that.
All right, Dorsey, I want to just say thank you for dropping in on the podcast. You've been amazing. I do want to wish you well and continue success.
Thank you.